If I had a nickel for every time I've seen a seraphim angelic character named Sarah, I'd have 2, which is probably not weird at all considering the namesake, but whatever. Moving on. In this time of indie shows and indie games of any format of entertainment, there is one that I held the most potential of against any media, through personal opinion, obviously, and that is Minecraft Roleplay. And now, not those kind, but a small projection of art meeting form of a little-known 2011 video game series called Minecraft. Early Minecraft roleplay YouTubers included the members of Little Club, like Little Lizard, or Tiny Turtle, Athmau, LDS, Shadow Lady, and others from the Yandere High School series like Sam Gladiator and Grian, who were pioneers in storytelling and character-driven content that established roleplay as a popular Minecraft format. And in the past few years, there has been this resurgence of the art, including creators such as Terrange, Isabox, and, whom we're looking at today, Rexiipher, or Rexiipher, in his series Freak Show. Freak Show is a high school roleplay story that centers around Rev Venet, a necromancer boy whose parents end up sending him to a high school for rehabilitating monstrous humanoids, though Rev, understandably, is confused and avoidant of the thought of staying around, seeing himself as a human, until, plot twist, he's actually a revenant, and that revelation has so far put him in the path of a literal self-destruction to escape the school and its principal, Viviana. But our conversation today isn't about Rev, nor is it about Viviana, but rather one of the 3 main foils and characters that serve as his friends, as little as Rev would call them that. Of the 3 there are Belladonna, a witch girl, her name is inspired by the poisonous plant, in addition to Mark Dracula, a vampire, and of course, our focus today, Sera Phim, which, if you follow the patterns, is a seraphim, which from the get-go placed her in a fairly strange situation. You see, almost all the characters in Freak Show are a monstrous or folklore type of humanoid based on dangerous things, from plants to vampires, ghosts, werewolves, zombies, the collection, you know the type, real monster high stuff. But Sarah falls under the outlier, as a fairly holy symbol through her cross necklace and overall appearance. Throughout much of the first episode and onward, we see Rev's entire disdain towards the entire structure of Cade, the high school that he's placed within, as a place that is far less for an elite private school against his expectations, but throughout both episode 1 and 2, we see Sarah as this detached student, monotone in expression, a sort of latent reaction to any events and external stimuli, someone who doesn't react to situations the way Rev does, to which he ignores or calls out, but not in a way that would be considered a deep focus on her behavior. Then came episode 3, and to be honest, is my sole favorite one because it questions how we interact with rage, how we neglect others, and really how repetition leads to a form of apathy. Sarah's characterization in episode 3 is based on the sole dismissal of any format of danger. Well, we should start with a summation of the episode itself, of course, and what happens in it as Rev is waiting for his parents to come pick him and Raven, his Frankenstein cat, up from a family visit event occurring within the school. When they don't, Baba Yaga, yes, she is a teacher in the school too, places him on cleanup duty to pass the time, with Wendy, a Wendigo, who is his constant annoyance to him.
A date yet?
Shut up!
What the hell?
And, of course, Sarah, which the fact that both are also there indicates an entire line of reasoning as well that we'll get into in a bit. Rev and Wendy end up fighting, and then they break a magic mirror that sends them into a reflected reality of Cade, to which they spend most of the episode attempting to get back, or at least Rev does, with the, assistance of Sarah, who has this divine sight in order to see them into the other reality and interact with both characters. Most of the other episodes, she's been stagnant, seen just sitting around and staring at the floor, or simply existing, which, in my own rant in the Discord, I imagine as a secretive form of storytelling that she was a secret spy of some being sent to stop this lurking evil in the school, which, other than Viviana, could be the void creatures hiding within the reflected dimension. TLDR, Rev ends up back with the assistance of Sarah, who has her own valid crash out next to Rev's own, sending Wendy packing and returning back to the world. But that's not the scene I want to focus on. Sarah's speech is an interesting contrast to most characters that has less to do with her biology and more psyche than anything. In psychology, monotone speech, also known as monopitch, refers to a voice lacking variations in fundamental frequency and intensity. Such speech patterns can be an objective measure of flat effect, where there is a less variance in both the amplitude and the frequency of speech. It's a crucial way in conveying verbal messages, and avoiding it is important for accentuating specific implications beyond words. Monotony can impact creative thinking and lead to disinterest, boredom, lethargy, and lack of desire, potentially resulting in depression. You see, Sarah is someone who holds a large amount of apathetic and uselessness within her actions in the story, all part of her character, but with 2 episodes in, we don't see much help. And we know that she holds divine power, able to take down an entire team of skeletons, the janitors of the school, and yet, even to Rev's confusion, she does not follow him to the potential exit in episode 1, nor puts much effort into catching one of the revived students in episode 2, nor getting trapped with Rev in the reflective reality of possible eternity. And why is this? Well, when Rev is looking around for some level of help with Sarah, she encounters Professor Lovecraft, the teacher of the rehabilitation class, which is the whole point of Cade, allowing monsters to co-inhabit the human world by learning about humans and how to behave. And he can't find any other way to continue without Sarah, who is in the physical world. Though being able to talk to him, has a conversation with Professor Lovecraft that Rev spies on when he runs out of patience. Let's take a look.
Of your class, you've been here the longest, and you've undergone the least change, despite your tenure here at Cade. I've tried countless approaches and pushed you toward countless activities, and yet none of them hold your interest.
No.
I'm aware you also haven't had any visitors today. Does this not upset you at all?
Should it? My father is a busy man.
Most in your position would be upset, Miss Phim, or at the very least feel some way about it. Do you recall why you're here at Cade? Or have you forgotten? You proved to have trouble fulfilling your duties as a guardian angel to humans. Many died under your care. Your mentors enlisted you in Cade in the hopes that you would learn to care about your duties, or even people. Yet even after all this time, do you still harbor no care for your role?
No.
I see. Then, I'm afraid I'm not sure what there remains to do for you, Miss Phim. There comes a time when something must change, lest we be stuck in eternity, never growing, never improving. If you ever do feel that time come, please, let me know. Until then, you are dismissed.
Sorry.
Whatever.
We clearly see that she has a low amount of care towards any activities that Lovecraft gives to her. Any form of engagement with the school itself being met with less than an enthusiastic care or a word or two, and that in of itself is congruent to what we've seen of Sarah, that she doesn't care if her father comes to visit or not, that she's been here, as she says towards the end of the episode, hundreds of years with no neglect, and that through it all, her duties, the main purpose behind her position here, had been removed under the effect of the deaths of those that she was meant to be guarding as a guardian angel. Her behavior aligns with 2 properties: alexithymia, the difficulty in understanding and identifying and describing emotions in oneself and others. Her question, should it, in response to not being upset by her father's absence, suggests a genuine confusion about the appropriate emotional reaction. And anhedonia, the inability to experience pleasure from activities usually found enjoyable. This aligns with the professor's observation that none of them hold your interest, suggesting a pervasive loss of capacity for enjoyment or motivation. The monotony of these things have been something that impacts a lot of our lives, through disinterest and burnout for individuals like therapists and content creators, even through positive effects in our drive to help others. For someone like Sarah, guarding humans for centuries, repeatedly witnessing human fragility, suffering, and death, could progressively erode her emotional engagement, leading to a state where she feels little to no emotional connection to her responsibilities, or the being she is meant to protect. Desensitization is a process where repeated exposure to emotional stimuli lessens an individual's emotional responsiveness, which could also explain her apparent indifference. Over a vast span of time, even the most profound events might lose their emotional impact, rendering her detached from her suffering or the well-being of others. In the 2017 Journal of Moral Philosophy, specifically the chapter discussing the value in very long lives, Dr. Preston Green makes the argument against the idea that a longer life would be better. It is claimed that negative psychological states such as boredom would be unavoidable if our lives were significantly longer. Against the idea that a deathless life would be better, it is claimed that such a life would be lacking important sources of value because death is a precondition for many of our valuing attitudes. I argue that these problems are avoided by a very long and potentially infinite lives that incorporate fading memory, limited ignorance of future events, and temporal scarcity. I conclude that very long lives are in principle desirable, and that death does not play an essential role in our valuing attitudes. But actions in of themselves aren't without the comprehension of the present tense, and we know that there could most definitely be to a level of parental neglect for less than what characters like Mark would be impacted by, and I do want to make a video on him in the future, but it is something far more profound. Humans, as we typically are, tend to be overly emotional. People who require help, from adolescents to elders. We are fragile creatures of the world whose main value is our sentience and adaptability. And as such, to some people, that makes us predictable, capable of being understood as needing to be taken care of, to which Sarah addresses through a dismissal of her duties, which, even through the consequence of the deaths of those that she was meant to protect, there is this disconnect between the customer and the worker, as an analogy, and we are never under the assumption of a personal connection beyond what is necessary as the social role and identity given to ourselves. To nearly no other character has Sarah shown some level of engagement towards other than Rev, and in a fairly valid crash out for him, which, let's be honest, all his crash outs are valid, the element of shared irritation rather than shared trauma creates a space where action can be taken. That because no one is allowed to leave Cade, Sarah, as her traditional emotional response, detaches from the situation, seen sitting around or just attending her schedule, though she is sometimes seen skipping classes like in episode 1. However, even with him, Rev, she shows her monotonous nature, and when the realization in episode 3 comes that they are trapped in this reflection of reality through Wendy's obvious betrayal, her lack of response garners this amazing response from Rev.
Are you kidding me? You're seriously not mad right now?
Should I be?
Yes! Yes, you should!
Why?
Because you hate this school! You skip class all the time, and you don't want to be here, but you do nothing about it! Even now, that Wendigo sealed you in the void for eternity, and you still don't care! What is wrong with you? If I were you, and my dad didn't show up, everyone forced me to stay at a school I didn't want to be at, and I got tormented by the students here, I'd do more than get a little mad. I'd rage! I'd do anything to get out! Or at least fight until I get my way. I wouldn't sit there and take it! I'll never understand how you could just let them do this to you. Because I wouldn't. Do you have anything to say?
No.
Forget it. I'm getting out of here. You can sit around and do nothing until the stars burn out for all I care.
When we are in an apathetic state, we tend to not put much thought into any instance of self-preservation. It's similar to a depressive scenario, and I do think that Sarah has some version of that. But even so, it's still a recognition from her perception. Rev obviously has a point here, that inaction through maltreatment or even through an opinion that is avoidant and against the given situation is entirely unacceptable, and can lead to the damage of the self. There is a clear projection of the manner in which his position is attempted to be changed to her own. But, I mean, both are in a similar circumstance, but Rev chooses an active role. Angry and intensely destructive and rebellious, but active. And that he's not going to be brought down by any external forces. And he may have some anchoring that he is dismissing, but it is action, and that is the trigger that pulls her from this cyclical nature. After a run-in with the creature of the void, Rev is helped by Sarah, as she explains her change of behavior in mind through this clip too.
Sarah?
Don't listen to it.
Why are you here?
You were right.
What?
I've been at this school longer than anyone, and never has someone held my interest. Until you.
Me?
I've never met a student like you. Your rage against everything, it's the first thing to catch my interest. I found myself wanting to watch you, to see how you behave. The school is inescapable, and yet you fight it like no other. I think I want to learn that rage. I want to learn it from you.
I'm not a teacher you want.
Allow this to be my first act of defiance, then. You don't have a choice.
Great.
I could give you release.
Rev, then it doesn't need you.
Sarah's initial state, monotone, detached, and skipping classes, is consistent with the concepts of apathy and emotional blunting, often resulting from existential nihilism tied to her centuries-long failed existence as a guardian angel. Her environment, Cade, further reinforces this stasis as the inescapable nature validates the belief that action is futile. The key to her change is her interaction with Rev, specifically how his active defiance serves as a psychological anchor and catalyst that creates several points. 1. Rev's active rage. His rage against everything is not just anger, it is agency. He refuses to accept the given reality, embodying the opposite of Sarah's moral disengagement and anhedonia. Recognition of value is the second point. As Sarah explicitly states, never has someone held my interest until you. I found myself wanting to watch you to see how you behave. This indicates a break in her anhedonia, and the inability to feel pleasure and interest is removed, as Rev's action is the first external stimulus in centuries to generate genuine interest, a necessary precursor to motivation and emotional engagement. The third point is projection of need. Rev's earlier speech targeted her passive avoidance, suggesting that inaction, even from a position of detached superiority, leads to self-damage. Sarah's later statement, "You are right," confirms that she internally processed and accepted this critique. And finally, the fourth point, learning as a solution. By saying, "I think I want to learn that rage," Sarah reveals that she perceives rage not as a destructive emotion, but as a skill or a tool for survival and change. She wants to adopt his active coping strategy to combine her own passive coping strategy of detachment. Sarah is someone who I find a lot of people, both in media and the real world, can relate to. This cyclical bowl of nonsense that we live within, and it's difficult times. Absolutely they are. But even still, even through our avoidance of the world, there is still moments of active action. And sometimes we cope through our art, our music, our stories. And it is a scary time nowadays that we have stolen from us. But even still, even through everything, there is still hope for the world. That those that don't take action aren't just forgetting or shouldn't be. Everyone has a role to play. That's how the social world was made. And just like with Sarah, we need our own revs and emotional anchors in the world to bring us back into what really matters, appreciating it for what it is, and choosing whether or not to accept it. So, until next time, Sarah!